For our own purposes, we're going to write a function that will display a message in the message div. This will allow us to centralize the message handling and help keep our event processing logic tidy. While technically this isn't related to event handling, it does help illustrate some of the key concepts introduced in the first segment of this video. We'll follow the pattern outlined in that segment and pass an object parameter that controls the behavior of the function. As a bonus, we'll see how we can explicitly set what the keyword this references when we call a function. The head and body tags have been collapsed so we can focus on the code. At this time, they are exactly the same as they were at the end of the last section. We'll expand them later on and take a look at them when we add more elements or make other changes. Let's take a look at the show event message function. It may seem a bit much just to show something in the messages div. We've set it up to allow for maximum flexibility in the future. It's really just 3 lines of code, even though it's formatted to occupy more than 3 lines on the screen. The first thing we do is organize our options object to make sure it has the bare minimum properties that we're expecting. We expect event type, event target, and suffix properties. If any of these aren't supplied, we make sure we have default values for each. Notice the default value for event target. We're using the keyword this as the default. Within the context of this function, the keyword this will usually reference the HTML page, events2. That obviously is not the element we want to use. There is a way to call this function and set the context of the this keyword to the element that we want to deal with. We'll go over this in a moment. Next, we construct a textual message comprised of the event type, the node name of the target, and the suffix. We take the precaution of supplying the text of unknown in the case where the event target doesn't have a node name. When would this occur? Whenever we call this function without a valid document element, or call it with an improperly defined parameter object, or with no parameter at all. There's one other time we'll see unknown, but we'll talk about that in the next segment dealing with custom events. Within the click event handler, we make use of the call method instead of calling the function directly. Why? That's how we set the context of the this keyword. Within the anonymous function attached as the event handler, the keyword this references the element that was clicked. Let's say it's the button. We want to pass a reference to the button to the show event message function so we can get information about it, namely the node name. When the call method is used on a function, as we're doing here, the first parameter is used as the context, not the options parameter our function is expecting. In our case, we're passing a reference to the element that was clicked. Since we're not passing any other parameters, JavaScript will treat it as if we passed no parameters at all, and the options parameter that our function is expecting will be undefined. The this keyword will be set to our clicked element. Think of the first parameter of the call method as being a parameter to JavaScript, not the function that's being called. See how the default value for the event target property is this. Now we see how the connection is made to the clicked event instead of the HTML page. The this keyword is set to the clicked element and overrides the default behavior of referencing the page. Let's prove the point by adding a parameter that changes a suffix, but nothing else. We've just changed the default break to include an exclamation point before it. That should end the message with a visible sign that something has changed. Let's take a look at the result of using our new function. Now we get a message that a click occurred and what the node name of the element is. As expected, we get an exclamation point at the end of the message too. Our suffix property is working. So why did we use the call method, and how can we avoid doing that? First of all, the call method is a very powerful feature of JavaScript that not many programmers make appropriate use of. Many times programmers struggle with scope and aren't sure what the this keyword will reference within a function. Making use of call, and its close relative apply, can help simplify numerous checks within a function that try to determine what this references. In our case, we can be sure that this will refer to the element that was clicked. To use the function without the call method, we could write code like this. Without the call method, we must define the event target property explicitly. Notice that we're just assigning whatever is referenced by this to the event target property, which is the element that was clicked. Here's a case where there's more than one way to accomplish a given task. Which way is better? That's something that needs to be answered on a case-by-case basis. It depends on the comfort level of the programmers on the team, the complexity of the code, and what is trying to be accomplished. In this simple coding example, it only saves a few keystrokes to use one method over the other. We'll continue to use the call method for this video. But let's prove that the code works with the current syntax. Notice that we no longer have the exclamation point. That's because we aren't providing a property for suffix. Everything else is working exactly as before. With our message function in place, we're ready to start handling multiple events from multiple elements.